He taught the mute alien girl sign language, never knowing her father commanded the fleet. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The recycling center on Station Terminus 7 smelled like burnt plastic and ozone, a combination that most beings found unbearable, but that Nathan Brooks had grown accustomed to over his 3 years working there. He was just another human among thousands scattered across the Galactic Union's forgotten corners, making ends meet in jobs that the more advanced species considered beneath them. What Nathan didn't know, as he sorted through another bin of discarded tech, was that his life was about to intersect with the most powerful military figure in the quadrant. She appeared on a Tuesday, if Station Terminus 7 followed Earth's arbitrary calendar system, which Nathan liked to pretend it did. The girl couldn't have been more than 12 cycles old in human years, her silver skin catching the harsh fluorescent lights of the recycling center's waiting area. She belonged to the Valoran species, recognizable by their elongated fingers, large expressive eyes that shifted colors with emotion, and the distinctive crest of crystalline structures that ran from their foreheads down to the base of their necks. Nathan had seen plenty of Valorans during his time on the station, usually diplomats or merchants, but never one so young and never one alone. The station's social services coordinator, a four-armed banther named Grix, brought her to the recycling center with an expression of bureaucratic frustration written across his mantis-like face. Grix approached Nathan during his break, his multiple arms gesturing in the agitated manner characteristic of his species when dealing with problems outside standard protocols. Then Grix said, his translator rendering his clicking speech into flat galactic common. "Brooks, we have a situation. This young Valoran was found 3 days ago in the lower commercial district. No identification, no family, and she won't communicate verbally with anyone." Nathan looked at the girl, who stood perfectly still near the entrance, her eyes a deep purple that he'd learned indicated fear or sadness in Valorans. She wore simple gray clothing that had seen better days, and she clutched a small datapad to her chest like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. Nathan replied, "I'm not really qualified for this, Grix. I sort garbage for a living. Why bring her to me?" Grix's compound eyes fixed on Nathan with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. The Banther said, "Because you're the only human on this station who knows Old Earth Sign language. I did research. Before the Valoran species developed universal translators, a small subset of their population used a manual communication system almost identical to what you call American Sign Language. It's genetic. Some are born without the ability to produce speech, though they can hear perfectly. This child is one of them." Nathan felt his stomach drop. He'd learned sign language back on Earth to communicate with his younger sister, who'd been born deaf. That felt like another lifetime ago, before the colony ships, before his family had been scattered across 3 different systems looking for work. He said to Grix, "Even if I know sign language, how do you know she'll understand me? Valoran sign and ASL can't be exactly the same." Grix produced a small device from one of his many pockets. He continued, "This is a translation matrix. It will adapt your signs to Valoran manual communication in real time, projected as a hologram she can see. Station services will pay you double your current salary to take her in temporarily and help her communicate. We need to find her family, and she's the only one who knows where they are." Nathan looked at the girl again. She was staring at him now, her eyes shifting from purple to a lighter lavender, which he thought might indicate curiosity. Against every bit of common sense he possessed, he found himself nodding. That evening, Nathan's cramped quarters in the station's human residential block became slightly more cramped with the addition of a scared Valoran child. She sat on the small couch he'd fabricated from recycled materials, still clutching her datapad, watching him with those color-shifting eyes as he tried to figure out what to do next. Nathan started simply, sitting across from her and activating the translation matrix Grix had given him. He signed slowly, "My name is Nathan. What is your name?" The holographic projection shimmered between them, translating his ASL into flowing Valoran manual signs. The girl's eyes widened, shifting to a bright gold that Nathan interpreted as surprise or excitement. Her hands moved hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. The matrix translated her signs back to him in text on a small screen. My name is Kira. You can speak my language. Nathan felt a small surge of triumph. He signed back. I'm learning. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Kira's hands moved again, more fluid now. She signed. I am not hurt. I am lost. I cannot find my way home. Over the next few weeks, Nathan and Kira developed a routine. He would work his shift at the recycling center while she attended the station's youth education programs. And in the evenings, they would sit together and talk in sign language. The matrix became less necessary as Nathan learned to read Valoran signs directly, and Kira proved to be a remarkably patient teacher. She was brilliant, he discovered. At an age when most species were still learning basic concepts, Kira could discuss quantum mechanics, stellar navigation, and military strategy with the ease of someone much older. Nathan found it odd but attributed it to Valoran education methods, which he'd heard were quite advanced. One evening, about a month into their arrangement, Nathan was teaching Kira about Earth culture, something she seemed endlessly fascinated by. He was telling her about baseball, using a recycled sphere and a metal rod to demonstrate, when she asked a question that caught him off guard. Kira signed. Why do humans play games that simulate combat, but call them sports and celebrate them? Other species find this disturbing. Nathan paused, considering his answer carefully. He signed back. Humans need challenges. We need to compete, to test ourselves. But most of us would rather do it throwing a ball than shooting weapons. It's how we stay sharp without hurting each other. Kira's eyes shifted to a deep blue, which Nathan had learned indicated deep thought. Her hands moved again. She signed. My father says humans are dangerous because they find joy in simulated violence. He says it means they are always ready for real violence. Nathan felt a small chill. He signed. Your father sounds like he thinks about humans a lot. What does he do? Kira's hands froze mid-sign. Her eyes flickered through several colors rapidly. Purple, gold, red, a pattern Nathan didn't recognize. Then she signed simply. He is in the military. I should not speak of it. Nathan didn't push, but the conversation stuck with him. Station Terminus 7 wasn't exactly a military hub. It was a civilian station on the edges of Galactic Union space, mostly populated by merchants, workers, and the occasional tourist. Why would a military officer's daughter end up lost here? Over the following weeks, Nathan noticed other peculiarities. Kira knew an unusual amount about station security protocols. She could identify different classes of military vessels just by their engine signatures, which she explained she could feel through the station's hull vibrations. Once, when a patrol ship docked at the station, Kira had become visibly agitated, her eyes flashing red, and she'd insisted they stay in Nathan's quarters until it left. Despite these oddities, Nathan grew genuinely attached to the girl. She was funny, in her own way, making observations about human behavior that were simultaneously insightful and hilarious. She found the concept of humans eating food for pleasure rather than pure sustenance baffling and delightful. Nathan introduced her to chocolate, which Valorans could safely consume, and her eyes had cycled through every color he'd ever seen in rapid succession, which he interpreted as pure joy. Kira, in turn, taught Nathan about Valoran culture. She explained that her people valued silence and contemplation, that the ability to communicate without sound was seen as a gift rather than a disability among traditional Valorans. She taught him their philosophy of balanced thought, the idea that every action should be considered from multiple perspectives before being taken. She signed to Nathan one evening. Humans act quickly. This frightens other species. But I think it is also why humans solve problems others cannot. You do not become paralyzed by overthinking. Nathan had laughed at that. He signed back. Trust me, humans overthink plenty. We just also have a talent for making impulsive decisions and hoping they work out. As the weeks turned into months, Grix would occasionally check in, but his attempts to locate Kira's family had hit dead ends. The Valoran government had no record of a missing child matching her description. No family had filed reports. It was as if she'd materialized from nowhere. Nathan should have found this more concerning than he did, but he'd fallen into a comfortable pattern. Kira was a good kid, strange circumstances aside, and he was happy to provide her with a stable home for as long as necessary. Then, on a day that started like any other, everything changed. Nathan was at the recycling center, sorting through a new shipment of decommissioned electronics, when the station's emergency alerts began blaring. The harsh klaxons were accompanied by flashing red lights and an automated message in multiple languages announcing an unscheduled military arrival. Through the recycling center's grimy windows, Nathan could see ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Not just any ships. These were Valoran battle cruisers, 12 of them, each one larger than the entire civilian station. Their hulls gleamed with the distinctive silver-blue alloy that made Valoran military vessels instantly recognizable across the galaxy. Grix came scrambling into the recycling center, all four of his arms flailing in panic. Grix shouted, his translator struggling to keep up with his rapid speech. "Brooks, we have a situation. The Valoran Second Fleet just arrived, and they're demanding access to the station. Their commander claims his daughter is here. They've threatened to board us by force if we don't cooperate." Nathan felt his blood run cold. He said, "Kira." Grix's eyes swiveled to focus on him. The Banther said, "The child you've been housing? Brooks, do you have any idea who her father is? That's not just any fleet out there. That's Commander Theron's flagship leading them. Theron, the Valoran who won the siege of Karthus Rim. The military leader who has the entire Galactic Council terrified because he's been advocating for preemptive strikes against species he deems potential threats." Nathan's mind raced. He said, "He's been advocating against humans, hasn't he?" Grix's silence was answer enough. Nathan ran from the recycling center, ignoring Grix's shouts behind him. The station's corridors were chaos, with civilians of dozens of species rushing to gather belongings or find shelter. Station security, woefully unprepared for a military incursion, tried to maintain order but mostly just added to the confusion. Nathan reached his quarters in record time, bursting through the door to find Kira sitting calmly on the couch, staring at her datapad. She looked up at him, her eyes a resigned shade of gray. Nathan's hands moved frantically. He signed, "Kira, there's a fleet outside. They're looking for you." "Your father?" Kira nodded slowly. Her hands moved with careful precision. She signed, "Commander Theron of the Valoran Second Fleet." "Yes, he is my father." Nathan felt like the floor had dropped away beneath him. He signed, "Why didn't you tell me? Why are you here? Did you run away?" Kira's eyes shifted to that deep blue of contemplation. Her hands began to move, telling a story Nathan wasn't prepared for. She signed, "I did not run away. I was taken. 3 months ago, a group opposed to my father's military policies kidnapped me. They hoped to use me as leverage to stop his campaign against emerging species. They brought me to this station because it is far from Valoran space and has weak security. But they were not cruel. They gave me freedom to move around, thinking a child could not escape." Nathan signed quickly. "But you did escape?" Kira continued signing. "I escaped from my watchers, yes. But then I was lost. I know starships and military protocols, but I have never lived on a civilian station. I did not know how to ask for help because I was afraid anyone I told about my father would either ransom me or use me as those who took me intended. When Grix found me and mentioned you knew sign language, I saw an opportunity. A human, a recycler, someone with no political connections who could teach me to survive while I decided what to do." Nathan's head was spinning. He signed, "So this whole time, you've been hiding from both your kidnappers and your father?" Kira's eyes flickered red briefly, embarrassment or shame. She signed, "I was afraid. My father loves me, but his love is complicated. He believes humans and other young species are threats that must be controlled or eliminated before they become too powerful. He has been gathering support in the Valoran government for preemptive military action. I have heard him discuss it many times. He believes it is the only way to ensure Valoran security." Nathan sat down heavily on the floor across from her. He signed, "And what do you believe?" Kira's hands moved slowly, thoughtfully. She signed, "I believe my father was right. I was taught that humans were impulsive, violent, and dangerous, that they would eventually threaten the Galactic Union. But then I lived with you. You, a human who had nothing, who worked in refuse, took in a strange alien child without hesitation. You taught me your language, shared your food, made me feel safe. You asked for nothing in return. You never tried to use me." She paused, then continued signing. "You taught me something my father never could. That capability for violence does not mean inevitability of violence. that strength can be paired with kindness. My father sees human military potential and assumes malice. But I have seen human compassion and learned it is just as fundamental to your species. Before Nathan could respond, the room's communication panel lit up with an incoming priority message. A face appeared on the screen, an older Valoran male with sharp features and eyes that cycled between authoritative gold and angry red. His crystalline crest was more pronounced than Kira's, marking him as a mature adult of high status. The Valoran spoke in perfect galactic common, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. He said, "I am Commander Theron of the Valoran Second Fleet. I know my daughter is on this station. I know she is in the human residential sector. Whoever is harboring her will hand her over immediately, or I will authorize my forces to extract her. You have 1 standard hour to comply." The transmission ended abruptly. Nathan looked at Kira. He signed, "What do you want to do? I'll support whatever choice you make." Kira's eyes were purple again, that color of fear, but her hands moved with determination. She signed, "I must face him, but I am afraid he will not listen to what I have learned. I am afraid he will continue his path toward war, and many will die. Humans, Valorans, others caught between. All because he cannot see what I have seen." Nathan thought for a long moment, then signed, "What if we make him see? What if you could show him what you've experienced?" Kira tilted her head, a gesture of confusion. She signed, "How? He will take me back to the fleet immediately. He will not give me time to explain." Nathan stood up, a plan forming in his mind that was probably suicidally stupid, but felt right anyway. He signed, "Then we don't give him a choice. We make him spend time with humans. We make him see what you saw." Over the next hour, Nathan worked frantically. He contacted every human on Station Terminus 7, all 43 of them, and explained the situation. To his amazement, they all agreed to help. He also reached out to Grix and several other non-humans he'd befriended during his time on the station. When Commander Theron and his security detail arrived at Nathan's quarters, they found not a cowering human hiding a child, but a gathering of dozens of beings of multiple species, all standing in the station's communal area in an organized display of peaceful assembly. Theron was an imposing figure even without his military entourage. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his silver skin seeming to glow with an inner light, his eyes fixed on Nathan with an intensity that would have made most beings flee. His dozen guards, all heavily armed Valoran soldiers, fanned out around him in practiced formation. Theron's voice was cold when he spoke. He said, "Human, you have my daughter. Hand her over, and I may overlook this incident." Nathan stepped forward, his heart hammering but his voice steady. He said, "Commander Theron, I do have your daughter. She's safe, unharmed, and she'll be returned to you. But first, I'm asking you to honor a human custom. Give me 24 hours of your time. Let me show you what your daughter experienced while she was here." Theron's eyes flashed red, pure anger. He replied, "You dare make demands of me? I command a fleet capable of reducing this station to atoms. I could take my daughter and eliminate every being here without consequence." Nathan didn't flinch, though it took every ounce of courage he possessed. He said, "You could, but your daughter asked me to make this request. She has something to show you, something to tell you, but she wants you to understand the context first. She wants you to see what she saw." From the crowd behind Nathan, Kira emerged. She walked calmly to her father, and Nathan saw the commander's entire demeanor change instantly. The anger drained from his eyes, replaced by a swirl of colors that Nathan now recognized as relief, love, and fear all mixed together. Theron dropped to one knee to be at eye level with his daughter. He spoke in Valoran, which the translation matrix rendered for Nathan. He said, "Kira, my light, are you hurt? Did they harm you?" Kira's hands began to move in Valoran sign language. The translation matrix displayed her words for everyone present. She signed, "I am unharmed, Father. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to stay here for 1 day. I need you to see what I have seen. Please, Father. Trust me." Nathan watched the internal struggle play out across Theron's features. Finally, the commander stood and addressed his guards in clipped Valoran. They lowered their weapons, but didn't relax their vigilance. Theron said to Nathan, his galactic common heavily accented but clear, 24 hours. "But my guards remain with me, And if I detect any deception, any attempt to harm my daughter or use her against me, the consequences will be absolute." Nathan nodded. He replied, "Understood. Commander, welcome to Station Terminus 7. What followed was one of the strangest days of Nathan's life. He had organized the humans and friendly aliens of the station to essentially host the most powerful military figure in the quadrant, showing him the daily life of a civilian outpost. They started with breakfast at the station's communal dining hall, where humans and other species gathered to share food and conversation. Theron watched with barely concealed suspicion as Nathan and others prepared food, not just the efficient nutrient paste common across the galaxy, but actual cooked meals with spices and care. An older human woman named Sarah Morgan, who ran the station's greenhouse, brought fresh vegetables she'd grown. She explained to Theron, through translation, how humans liked to cultivate living things even when it was inefficient, how they found comfort in the act of nurturing growth. Theron observed but didn't participate, his eyes tracking every movement, analyzing every interaction as if it were a military operation. The turning point began when Nathan took Theron to the recycling center. Kira came along, signing her observations to her father as Nathan explained his work. Nathan said as he sorted through bins, "This is what I do, Commander. I take things other species throw away and find ways to repurpose them. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. Someone has to close the loop, turn waste back into resources." Theron watched Nathan's practiced movements. He said, "This is inefficient. Automated systems could do this work faster and more accurately." Nathan nodded while continuing to sort. He replied, "You're absolutely right. But automated systems cost money this station doesn't have. Sometimes the human solution isn't the best solution. It's just the available solution. We're adaptable that way." Kira's hands moved, signing to her father. She signed, "Nathan has created 17 new sorting techniques during his time here. The station's recycling efficiency has increased by 32%. He did this not for reward, but because he saw a problem and wanted to fix it." Theron looked at his daughter, then back at Nathan. Something in his expression shifted slightly. The day continued with visits to various parts of the station. They met Dylan Rhodes, a human engineer who maintained the station's life support systems with spare parts and creative solutions that made Theron's trained military mind recoil at their improvised nature. Yet they worked flawlessly. They encountered Emily Parker, a human teacher who ran educational programs for the station's children of multiple species. She taught human literature alongside Valoran philosophy and Banther mathematics, creating a curriculum that celebrated diversity rather than fearing it. At every stop, Kira signed her observations to her father, explaining what she'd learned about humans. She signed about their tendency to help without being asked, their ability to find humor in hardship, their capacity to treat strangers as potential friends rather than threats. Evening came, and Nathan brought Theron and Kira to the station's observation deck, a large transparent section where beings could watch ships come and go against the backdrop of stars. A group of humans had gathered there, as they did most evenings, playing music on instruments they'd built or brought from Earth. The music was simple, acoustic guitars and voices blending in harmonies, but it filled the observation deck with warmth. Nathan noticed Theron's eyes had stopped their constant color shifting, settling into a steady blue of contemplation. Nathan said to Theron quietly, "We play music, Commander. We tell stories. We make art. We do these things even when we're poor, even when we're struggling, because they feed something in us that nutrient-paste and efficient systems can't touch." I think that confuses a lot of species. They see us as either potential soldiers or potential victims, but rarely as people just trying to find joy in existence. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "My intelligence reports on humans' focus on your military capabilities, your rapid technological advancement, your history of conflict, and your capacity for violence. They paint a picture of a species that could threaten the stability of the Galactic Union." Nathan met his gaze. He replied, "All of that is true, Commander. Humans can be violent. We have fought wars. We have the capacity to be a threat. But we also have the capacity to be allies, friends, and contributors to something larger than ourselves. The question isn't whether we're capable of violence. It's whether that's all we are. Your daughter spent months learning the answer to that question. Kira moved to stand between Nathan and her father. Her hands began to sign, and this time she signed slowly, deliberately, making sure her father absorbed every word. She signed, "Father, I was afraid of humans before I met Nathan. I believed what you taught me, that they were dangerous and uncontrolled. But living here, I learned something you never showed me. I learned that danger and kindness can exist in the same being. That the capacity for violence does not negate the capacity for compassion." She paused, then continued. "You say humans are a threat because they advance quickly and have a history of conflict. But Father, is that not also the history of our people? Did the Valorans not nearly destroy ourselves in the Crystalline Wars before we learned cooperation? Did we not achieve peace not by eliminating our capacity for violence, but by choosing not to use it?" Theron's eyes flickered through several colors rapidly. He signed back. "The Crystalline Wars were different. We were young as a space-faring civilization." Kira's hands moved with a firmness Nathan had never seen from her before. She signed, "And humans are younger still. You would judge them for being where we once were. You would eliminate a species for the crime of having potential they have not yet misused." The observation deck had grown quiet. The musicians had stopped playing, sensing the gravity of the moment. Other station residents, human and non-human alike, watched the exchange between father and daughter. Theron looked around at the gathered beings, then back at his daughter. He signed, "I nearly lost you, Kira. When you were taken, I vowed to never let myself be vulnerable again. I decided that the only way to protect you, to protect all Valorans, was to eliminate threats before they could materialize. Humans represent the greatest unknown variable in our sector. Their unpredictability makes them dangerous." Nathan couldn't follow the sign language, but the translation matrix displayed Theron's words. He spoke up, his voice carrying across the quiet deck. Nathan said, "Commander, you're right that humans are unpredictable. We make decisions that seem irrational to species that value careful planning. We act on emotion as much as logic. We improvise constantly. But that unpredictability, it goes both ways. Yes, we might do something that threatens you, but we're just as likely to do something that saves you." He gestured to the gathered crowd. Nathan continued, "Every human here, when I told them the situation, agreed to help. They didn't know you. They had no reason to trust a Valoran military commander who's been advocating for action against Earth. But they helped anyway because a scared kid needed her father, and that mattered more than politics or species differences. That's human unpredictability too." Theron was quiet for a very long time. The station seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Finally, the commander spoke, his voice softer than before. He said, "I came here prepared to retrieve my daughter and continue my campaign to the Galactic Council. I have evidence, projections, tactical analyses, all supporting the necessity of containing humanity before it becomes an unmanageable problem." He looked at Nathan, then at the other humans present, then finally at his daughter. Theron continued, "But my daughter, who I raised to think strategically and analyze threats, is telling me I am wrong. She has lived among you and sees something my reports do not capture." Kira's hands moved again. She signed, "Father, your reports measure capability and threat potential. They do not measure character or choice. Nathan could have ransomed me to you for wealth. Instead, he gave me a home and asked nothing. This station's humans could have fled when your fleet arrived. Instead, they stood with me to ensure you understood what I learned. These are not the actions of a threat. These are the actions of potential allies." Nathan added, "Commander, I won't pretend humans are perfect. We're not. We'll make mistakes, probably some big ones. But we're also capable of growth, of learning, of being better than our worst impulses. All we're asking is for the chance to prove that. The same chance every species in the Galactic Union was given." Theron's eyes cycled through colors Nathan had seen Kira display before. Purple, fear. Gold, surprise. Blue, contemplation. And finally, a soft green that Nathan had never seen in either of them. Theron said, "Green signifies hope in Valoran emotion expression. It is rare. I have not felt it in some time." He turned to his guards and spoke in rapid Valoran. They straightened, responding with what Nathan assumed was military acknowledgement, then filed out of the observation deck. leaving Theron alone with the station residents. The commander sat down on one of the observation benches, a gesture of informality that seemed to shock his own species members in the crowd more than anyone else. Theron said, "I will tell you all something I have told very few. I advocated for preemptive action against humanity not purely from tactical analysis, but from fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of a species that does not fit our models of behavior. Fear that if I did not act, something would happen that I could not protect my people from." He looked at Kira, and his voice became even softer. He continued, "When my daughter was taken, that fear became absolute. I wanted to control everything, eliminate every variable, ensure perfect safety through perfect order. But perfect safety through control is an illusion, is it not? My daughter was taken despite all my power, and she was returned not through force but through the kindness of strangers I considered threats." Kira moved to sit beside her father. Her hand signed, and her father watched them with complete attention. She signed, "Fear is wisdom, father. You taught me that. But wisdom must include knowing when fear guides and when it blinds. Your fear of humans blinded you to their other qualities. My fear, when I was lost, nearly prevented me from accepting Nathan's help. We both almost let fear make our decisions for us." Theron placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder, a gesture of affection among Valorans. He said to the assembled group, "I came to this station to retrieve my daughter and demonstrate Valoran power. Instead, I have been shown Valoran ignorance, my own included. I cannot undo my advocacy to the council, but I can change its direction." He stood and addressed Nathan directly. Theron said, "Human Nathan Brooks, you have given me my daughter and challenged my assumptions. I would make a request of you, if you are willing." Nathan felt everyone's eyes on him. He replied, "What kind of request, Commander?" Theron's eyes shifted to that hopeful green again. He said, "Return to Valoran space with us. You and any other humans willing to come, not as prisoners or subjects, but as cultural ambassadors. If I am to argue to the Council that humanity deserves partnership rather than preemption, I need beings like you to demonstrate what my daughter has learned. I need the Council to see what I have begun to see." The request caught Nathan completely off guard. He looked around at the other humans, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. Nathan said, "Commander, I'm nobody. I'm a recycler on a forgotten station. I'm not a diplomat or a representative of Earth." Theron replied, "You are exactly what is needed. Not a politician who will say what we want to hear, but a person living an honest life who can show us who humans truly are. My daughter did not learn about humanity from your leaders or your military. She learned from you, living your daily existence. That is what the Council needs to understand." Kira's hands moved, signing to Nathan even though her father could see. She signed, "Please, Nathan. You gave me a home when I needed one. Let me give you a chance to change the future for your species. Come with us." Nathan looked at the faces around him. Sarah Morgan, the greenhouse keeper, nodded encouragingly. Dylan Rhodes gave him a thumbs up. Emily Parker smiled. One by one, other humans indicated their support. Grix pushed through the crowd, all four arms raised in a gesture of excitement. The Banther said, "Brooks, this is an unprecedented opportunity. Humans becoming cultural ambassadors to the Valoran government? This could change everything for Earth's standing in the Galactic Union." Nathan felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. He thought about his sister, somewhere in another system. He thought about Earth, still struggling to find its place among the stars. He thought about Kira, the strange, brilliant girl who'd come into his life by accident and changed everything. He said to Theron, "I'll do it, but I have conditions." Theron's eyes flickered with what might have been amusement. He replied, "A human who makes demands of a fleet commander. This is either brave or foolish. Speak your conditions." Nathan said, "First, any human who comes does so voluntarily and can leave whenever they choose. Second, we're not showpieces or curiosities. We're people sharing our culture, which means we do it on our terms, authentically. And third, Kira gets to continue her education not just in Valoran traditions, but in human ones too. She's already started learning about Earth. She should get to finish." Theron considered for a moment, then extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement he must have researched. He said, "Agreed. though I suspect my daughter will prove a more demanding teacher than student when it comes to human culture. Kira's eyes flashed gold, happiness, and she signed rapidly to both of them. She signed, I already have a list of Earth books I want to read. And Nathan promised to teach me to play baseball. The observation deck erupted in relieved laughter, the tension of the day finally breaking. Humans and aliens alike began talking excitedly about the implications, about the opportunities, about the sheer strangeness of how the day had turned out. Over the next week, preparations were made. Nathan and 12 other humans from Station Terminus 7 volunteered to make the journey to Valoran space. The station itself buzzed with excitement and apprehension about what this might mean for human-alien relations. On the day of departure, Nathan stood in his empty quarters one last time, looking at the recycled furniture and the simple space that had been his home for 3 years. Kira stood beside him, her small bag of belongings looking remarkably similar to his own. Kira signed to him, Are you frightened? You are leaving everything familiar. Nathan signed back, having become quite fluent in Valoran manual communication, terrified, but also excited. Humans are good at walking into the unknown. It's kind of our specialty. Kira's eyes shifted to that soft green of hope. She signed, You taught me that family is not always the people you are born to. Sometimes it is the people who choose to care for you when they do not have to. You are my family now, Nathan Brooks. You and my father both. Nathan felt his throat tighten with emotion. He signed, You're my family too, kid. Come on, let's go show the galaxy what humans are really about. The journey to Valoran Prime took 2 weeks aboard Commander Theron's flagship, the Luminous Decree. It was Nathan's first time on a military vessel, and the experience was both intimidating and fascinating. The Valoran crew regarded the human passengers with curiosity, caution, and in some cases, barely disguised suspicion. Nathan spent much of the journey with Kira, teaching her about Earth history, music, and art. She was a voracious learner, absorbing information and asking questions that often made Nathan reconsider things he'd taken for granted. One evening in the ship's observation lounge, Kira asked him a question that cut to the heart of human nature. She signed, Nathan, if you had known who my father was, if you had known the power he held over human fate, would you still have helped me the same way? Nathan thought carefully before responding. He signed, Honestly, I don't know. Knowing might have made me cautious, political. I might have treated you as a means to an end rather than as a scared kid who needed help. Maybe the universe knew what it was doing, keeping me ignorant. Kira's eyes shifted through several colors. She signed, My father asked me the same question in reverse. He asked if I would have trusted you had I known you were human before meeting you. I told him no. I would have been too afraid, too convinced of your danger. Our ignorance of each other allowed us to meet as people rather than as representatives of our species. Nathan signed, There's probably a lesson in that. Maybe species get along better when they stop thinking of each other as species and start thinking of each other as individuals. Theron joined them in the observation lounge, carrying 3 containers of a Valoran beverage he discovered humans could safely consume. He'd been making an effort to spend time with the human passengers, learning about them as individuals. Theron said, sitting down with Nathan and Kira, We will arrive at Valoran Prime tomorrow. The Council has agreed to meet with you and the other humans, though I will be honest, there is significant skepticism. Many counselors believe this is a waste of time or a potential security risk. Nathan accepted the drink container. He said, Can't say I blame them. From their perspective, we probably do look like a threat. Young species, rapidly advancing, lots of weapons, complicated history. On paper, humanity is a risk. Theron's eyes were that contemplative blue. He replied, Yes, but my daughter has taught me that beings are more than what they appear on paper. The question is whether I can teach the Council the same lesson. Some of them are deeply entrenched in their fear of human potential. Nathan thought for a moment, then said, Commander, you can't convince people not to be afraid by telling them their fear is wrong. Fear is a legitimate response to uncertainty. What you can do is give them more information, more context, so their fear becomes informed rather than reactionary. Kira signed, her hands moving between her father and Nathan so both could see. Nathan is right. You cannot eliminate the Council's fear of humans, but you can show them that fear and friendship are not mutually exclusive. The Banther feared the Valorans once, did they not? Now they are our allies. Fear faded through familiarity. Theron nodded slowly. He said, wisdom from a child and a recycler. Perhaps the council needs more of both. He stood, preparing to leave, then paused. Nathan, tomorrow will be difficult. The council will test you, question you, perhaps even try to provoke you. They will want to see if humans are as volatile as they fear. Nathan met his gaze steadily. He replied, let them test. I'm not a diplomat, Commander. I'm just a guy who sorts garbage and tries to be decent. If that's not good enough for them, then maybe they're looking for the wrong things. The next day, Nathan and his fellow humans stood in the Grand Council chamber of Valoran Prime, a structure so breathtakingly beautiful it almost hurt to look at. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light, and the ceiling was open to the sky, showing the binary suns that illuminated the Valoran homeworld. The council consisted of 50 Valorans, each representing different regions and interests of their civilization. They sat in a semicircle arrangement, elevated above the floor where Nathan and the others stood. Commander Theron stood to the side in full military regalia, while Kira sat in a special section reserved for honored guests. The head counselor, an ancient Valoran named Aridin, whose crystalline crest had turned almost completely transparent with age, spoke first. Aridin said, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics, humans of Earth, you have been brought before this council to address concerns about your species' rapid expansion and potential threat to galactic union stability. Commander Theron has requested we reconsider our defensive posture regarding humanity. We will hear from you directly. Tell us, why should we not fear you? Nathan stepped forward, feeling the weight of 13 billion humans' future on his shoulders. He said, Counselor Aridin, members of the council, I can't tell you not to fear humanity. Fear is a choice each being makes for themselves. What I can tell you is who we are beyond your tactical reports. He gestured to the humans standing with him. Nathan continued, these are recyclers, teachers, engineers, farmers. We're not Earth's finest. We're not their diplomats or leaders. We're ordinary humans living ordinary lives in the mess and chaos and beauty of existence. If you want to know whether humanity is a threat, don't look at our weapons or our ships. Look at us. A counselor near the center, younger than Aridin with eyes that glowed an aggressive red, spoke up sharply. The younger counselor said, your humility is noted, human Nathan, but it does not address our concerns. Your species has a documented history of internal conflicts spanning your entire recorded civilization. You have fought wars over resources, ideology, religion, and territory. You have developed weapons capable of destroying your own planet multiple times over. How do we know you will not turn this capacity for destruction against us once you grow powerful enough? Nathan felt anger flare in his chest, but forced it down. He replied, Counselor, everything you said is true. Humans have fought terrible wars. We've done horrible things to each other and to our world. But we've also done something else. We've learned. We've grown. We've built institutions and systems designed specifically to prevent our worst impulses from dominating. He paused, gathering his thoughts. You're asking me to prove a negative, to prove we won't do something. I can't do that. No species can. But I can tell you what I've seen humans do. I've seen us sacrifice for strangers. I've seen us choose cooperation over conflict when it matters. I've seen us reach out to the unknown with hope instead of retreating into fear. Sarah Morgan, the greenhouse keeper, stepped forward to stand beside Nathan. She said, if I may add something, counselors, I'm 72 years old. I've lived through Earth's first contact, through our integration into the Galactic Union, through all the fear and uncertainty that came with discovering we weren't alone. I've watched humanity struggle with its place in the galaxy. She continued, her voice strong despite her age. What I've learned is that humans need purpose. We need challenges. Left with nothing to strive for, we turn on ourselves. But give us a goal, something to build or explore or create, and we'll pour everything we have into it. The question isn't whether humans are dangerous. It's whether we're given constructive channels for our energy or left to destroy ourselves and potentially others out of boredom and frustration. Another counselor, this one with eyes of cautious purple, spoke. The purple-eyed counselor said, "You speak of human potential for good, but potential is not guarantee." Commander Theron's initial assessment suggested preemptive limitation of human expansion was the safest course. What has changed to alter this recommendation? Before Nathan could respond, Kira stood up from her seat. She moved to the center of the chamber floor, her small figure somehow commanding attention despite her size. Kira began to sign, and the translation systems projected her words throughout the chamber. She signed, "What changed was that I lived with humans. Not as a counselor or a military analyst, but as a child needing help. I experienced human compassion firsthand. I learned that humans are not a monolith of aggression, but individuals capable of great kindness." Aridin raised a hand. He said, "Young Kira, daughter of our esteemed commander, your experience is valued. But you are young, and you lived with these humans for mere months. How can such limited exposure override cycles of analysis and data?" Kira's eyes flashed gold, and her hands moved with fierce determination. She signed, "Because data without context is meaningless. Your analyses measure what humans can do. I measured what they choose to do. Nathan could have used me for political gain. He chose to simply care for me. This station's humans could have fled your fleet. They chose to stand with me. These are not statistical anomalies. These are expressions of human values." She turned to look at her father, then back at the council. Kira continued signing. "My father taught me to analyze threats and plan for worse scenarios. This is good military thinking. But the council is not a military body. Your purpose is to guide Valoran civilization toward prosperity and wisdom. Wisdom means recognizing that fear of what might be should not override acknowledgement of what is." Theron stepped forward, his military bearing somehow both formal and protective of his daughter. He said, "Counselors, I came before you 6 weeks ago advocating for containment of humanity through military and political pressure. I presented evidence of human conflict potential and recommended we act before they became too powerful to control. I was wrong." A murmur went through the council. Aridin's eyes widened. He said, "Commander Theron, you are reversing your position entirely?" Theron replied, "Not entirely. Humans do represent a variable factor in galactic stability. They are unpredictable and capable of both great creation and great destruction. My error was in believing this made them uniquely dangerous. In truth, this makes them typically dangerous, like every species that has reached the stars. We Valorans nearly destroyed ourselves in our crystalline wars. The Banther fought the separation conflicts. Even the peaceful Lorien had their age of fracture." He gestured to Nathan and the other humans. Theron continued, "Every species carries the capacity for destruction alongside the capacity for creation. The question is never whether a species is capable of harm. It is whether they are capable of choosing otherwise. My daughter's experience and my own observations over the past weeks have shown me that humans are indeed capable of that choice." The younger counselor who had spoken earlier stood, his eyes still that aggressive red. He said, "Commander, with respect, you are allowing personal sentiment to cloud military judgment. Your daughter's safe return has made you vulnerable to emotional reasoning. The strategic reality remains that humanity is expanding rapidly with military capabilities that rival our own. Sentiment does not negate threat." Nathan felt the tension in the room spike. He saw Theron's eyes flash red in response, saw Kira's turn purple with fear that the progress they'd made was slipping away. He made a decision. Nathan said loudly, his voice cutting through the rising argument, "The counselor is absolutely right." The chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Nathan continued, "Sentiment shouldn't override strategic thinking. So let's talk strategy. Counselor, you're afraid humanity will become powerful enough to threaten Valoran security. Let me ask you this. What do you think happens if the Council follows the Commander's original recommendation? If you contain humanity through pressure and force?" The counselor's eyes narrowed. He replied, "Humanity would be limited to controlled growth, preventing them from becoming a destabilizing force." Nathan shook his head. He said, "No, you'd create exactly what you fear. You'd prove to humanity that the galaxy sees us as threats rather than partners. You'd force us into a defensive posture, accelerating our military development because we believe we had no choice. You'd create a self-fulfilling prophecy where your fear generates the very threat you wanted to prevent. He took a step forward. Nathan continued, but there's another strategy. You could choose to engage with humanity as emerging partners rather than potential enemies. You could share knowledge, establish genuine diplomatic relations, and integrate us into the Galactic Union as equals rather than subjects. By doing that, you'd give humanity a stake in galactic stability. You'd channel our energy and growth into constructive paths. Dylan Rhodes, the human engineer, added, it's basic psychology, counselors. Beings who feel trapped become dangerous. Beings who feel they have opportunities become collaborative. Which version of humanity do you want to create? Aridin was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes cycling through colors that Nathan couldn't interpret. Finally, he spoke. Aridin said, Human Nathan, you argue that our fear itself is the danger, that our defensive measures would create the threat we seek to avoid. This is a sophisticated understanding of strategic psychology. It is also exactly the kind of thinking that makes your species formidable. You see 3 steps ahead, anticipating reactions and counter-reactions. This intelligence is both impressive and concerning. Nathan felt frustration building. He replied, with respect, Counselor Aridin, it sounds like you've decided we're a threat no matter what we do. If we're aggressive, we're dangerous. If we're thoughtful, we're dangerously clever. If we're peaceful, we're suspiciously peaceful. How do we win? What would actually convince you that humanity deserves a chance? The chamber was silent. Aridin stared at Nathan for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, the ancient Valoran's eyes shifted to that rare green of hope. Aridin said, You win, human Nathan, by doing exactly what you just did. You challenged me directly, with frustration but without aggression. You expressed your feelings honestly while maintaining respect. You demonstrated that humans can experience strong emotions, like anger and fear, without being controlled by them. That is what I needed to see. He stood, his old frame straightening with effort. Aridin continued, I have lived through 3 major conflicts in Galactic Union history. Each began because species could not communicate their fears and frustrations effectively. Each escalated because beings confused strong emotion with hostile intent. You, a self-described recycler with no diplomatic training, have shown better emotional regulation and communication than many seasoned ambassadors. Aridin addressed the entire council. He said, I move that we table Commander Theron's original recommendations for human containment. Instead, I propose we establish a formal cultural exchange program with Earth, using these humans as initial ambassadors to help both species understand each other more fully. Let us choose engagement over isolation, understanding over assumption. The younger counselor who had been confrontational stood again. He said, Counselor Aridin, this is premature. A few articulate humans do not represent their entire species. Sarah Morgan spoke up, her grandmother's voice somehow carrying authority. She said, You're absolutely right, Counselor. We don't represent all of humanity. We're just a tiny sample. But consider this. We're not Earth's best. We're not their leaders or their heroes. We're ordinary people who happen to help a lost child. If ordinary humans can demonstrate the qualities Counselor Aridin described, imagine what our best can do. Emily Parker, the teacher, added, And if you're worried we might be performing for you, pretending to be better than we are, then let this exchange program test that. Spend time with humans. Let us spend time with Valorans. If we're faking, you'll discover it. If we're genuine, you'll have gained allies instead of creating enemies. Another counselor, one who hadn't spoken yet, rose. This one's eyes were a steady blue of contemplation. The contemplative counselor said, I have reviewed the reports from Station Terminus 7. What interests me is not the humans' actions during Commander Theron's visit, when they knew they were being evaluated, but their actions before. For months, Nathan Brooks cared for the commander's daughter without knowing who she was. He asked nothing in return. He taught her, fed her, and gave her safety purely because she needed it. These are not the actions of a species motivated solely by self-interest or aggression. The counselor continued. Moreover, the other humans of the station rallied to support Nathan's plan not because they were ordered to, but because they believed it was right. This suggests a cultural value system that prioritizes compassion and cooperation, not just in rhetoric, but in practice. I support Counselor Eridan's proposal. One by one, other counselors began to speak, asking questions, raising concerns, but the tone had shifted. The conversation was no longer about whether to fear humanity, but about how to safely engage with them. After hours of debate, Eridan called for a vote. The motion to establish formal cultural exchange programs with Earth, to integrate humanity more fully into galactic union institutions, and to abandon preemptive containment strategies passed with 72% support. As the council session ended and beings began to file out, Nathan felt the weight of the day crash down on him. He sat down right there on the chamber floor, suddenly exhausted. Kira came to sit beside him, her small hand taking his in a gesture she'd learned from humans. Her eyes were bright gold, happiness shining through. Kira signed with one hand, keeping the other in Nathan's. You did it. You changed their minds. You saved both our species from a conflict neither wanted. Nathan signed back tiredly. We did it. You were the one who started all this by trusting a strange human. I just followed through. Theron approached, and for the first time since Nathan had met him, the commander was smiling. He said, Human Nathan Brooks, you have given me my daughter, changed my perspective, and helped alter the course of Valoran policy. I find myself in your debt in ways I cannot easily quantify. Nathan stood up, facing the commander. He replied, You don't owe me anything, Commander. I helped your daughter because it was the right thing to do. Everything else just followed from that. Theron's eyes were that hopeful green. He said, Yes, it just followed. That simple human tendency to help first and calculate consequences later. It is both your greatest strength and what made you seem so dangerous to us. We could not predict beings who act on compassion before strategy. He extended his hand in the human gesture. Theron continued, The Council has approved the exchange program. You and your fellow humans will be the first official cultural ambassadors from Earth to Valoran Prime. Additionally, I have been authorized to extend an invitation to Earth's government for formal alliance discussions. You will be returning home as heroes, Nathan Brooks. Nathan took his hand, shaking it firmly. He said, I'm no hero, Commander. I'm just a recycler who got lucky and met your amazing daughter. She's the real hero in all this. Kira's eyes flashed through several colors rapidly, which Nathan had learned was her equivalent of blushing. She signed, I am not a hero. I was lost and afraid. You gave me a home and taught me not to fear. That is not heroism, it is kindness. Nathan signed back. Maybe kindness is a kind of heroism. The quiet kind that doesn't get songs written about it. Over the following months, Nathan and the other humans from Station Terminus 7 became fixtures of Valoran society. They lived among Valorans, taught courses about Earth culture, and learned about Valoran history and traditions in return. More humans arrived from Earth as the exchange program expanded, bringing diversity of perspectives and experiences. Nathan found himself in the strange position of being famous, not for anything he'd done intentionally, but simply for being himself at the right moment in history. News services across the Galactic Union ran stories about the human recycler who'd changed the course of interspecies relations by helping a lost child. Earth's government, initially suspicious of the whole situation, sent official diplomats to follow up on Nathan's accidental diplomacy. But they quickly learned what the Valoran Council had discovered, that humans connected better through genuine interaction than through political maneuvering. One evening, about 6 months into the exchange program, Nathan sat in a Valoran garden with Kira, watching the binary suns set. She'd grown in that time, not just physically but in confidence. She attended a prestigious Valoran academy now, but she visited Nathan regularly, maintaining the bond they'd formed. Kira signed to him, Nathan, I have been accepted into the Valoran Diplomatic Corps training program. I will be one of the youngest ever admitted. They say it is because I have unique experience with human relations. Nathan signed back, pride evident in his movements. That's amazing, Kira. You'll be a fantastic diplomat. You already changed one mind that needed changing. Your father's. Kira's eyes shifted to contemplative blue. She signed, My father has changed greatly. He now teaches courses at the military academy about cultural understanding and the dangers of fear-based strategy. He says I taught him that strength includes the ability to change one's mind when presented with new evidence. Nathan nodded. He signed, "Your father is a good man, Kira. He was never a bad person, just a scared one. Scared people make bad decisions sometimes, but they can also recognize their mistakes and grow from them." Kira was quiet for a moment, then signed, "Do you miss Earth? Your home?" Nathan considered the question carefully. He signed, "I miss some things. Food I grew up with. The specific smell of rain on Earth's soil. My sister, though we talk via communication channels regularly now. But home isn't just a place, Kira. It's the people you care about and who care about you. By that definition, I'm home right here." Kira's eyes went gold with happiness. She signed, "I am glad. Because I have a question to ask you. In Valoran culture, when someone saves your life or fundamentally changes it for the better, we have a tradition. We offer them a place in our family structure. It is not adoption exactly, but a recognition of bond that goes beyond friendship." Nathan's hand stilled. He signed, "Kira, what are you asking?" She signed slowly, deliberately, "My father and I would like to offer you formal family status in the House of Theron. You would be my acknowledged brother, his acknowledged son, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails in Valoran society. You would become part of our family in law as you already are in spirit." Nathan felt tears prick his eyes, something that had become embarrassingly common since he'd started living among beings who could read emotions through eye color changes. He signed, "I would be honored. But Kira, you know I'm still human. I'm still going to make mistakes, do things that confuse or frustrate you and your father. I'm still going to be unpredictable sometimes." Kira's hands moved with absolute certainty. She signed, "I know. That is part of what makes you family. Family is not about perfection. It is about commitment to each other despite imperfection. You taught me that." Nathan pulled her into a hug, a very human gesture that she'd grown to accept and even initiate. Over her shoulder, he saw Commander Theron approaching across the garden, his eyes that hopeful green. Theron said as he reached them, "I see my daughter has asked you. What is your answer, Nathan Brooks? Will you join the House of Theron?" Nathan released Kira and stood to face Theron. He replied, "Yes, Commander. I'd be proud to be part of your family. Though I have to warn you, humans have traditions too, like embarrassing family stories and terrible jokes at gatherings. You're signing up for a lot." Theron's expression shifted into what Nathan had learned was a Valoran smile, subtle but genuine. He said, "I believe I can endure terrible jokes if they come with the companionship and loyalty you have already demonstrated. Besides, my daughter has been teaching me some of your humor. I am beginning to understand why humans value laughter so highly. It is a form of shared joy, is it not?" Nathan grinned. He replied, "Exactly. It's how we tell each other that despite everything, life is still good enough to laugh about." The formal ceremony integrating Nathan into the House of Theron took place 2 weeks later. It was attended by Valoran dignitaries, human ambassadors, and representatives from a dozen other species. The event was broadcast across the Galactic Union as a symbol of the new era of cooperation between humans and Valorans. But for Nathan, the most important moment came after the ceremony, when he stood with his new sister and father, simply existing as a family unit that shouldn't have been possible but was. In the years that followed, the human-Valoran relationship became the template for how the Galactic Union integrated emerging species. The cultural exchange program Nathan had accidentally initiated expanded to include dozens of worlds. Fear-based preemptive policies gave way to engagement-based integration strategies. Kira became the youngest ambassador in Valoran history, specializing in human relations. She wrote extensively about her experiences, creating educational materials that helped other species understand humanity beyond their military capabilities. Theron retired from active military command to teach and write about strategic psychology and the cost of fear-based decision-making. His textbooks became required reading in military academies across the Union. And Nathan, the recycler from Station Terminus 7 who'd helped a lost alien child, continued to do what he'd always done. He helped where he could, learned what he was taught, and approached each day with the simple human philosophy that kindness was never wasted and connection was always worth the risk. 10 years after he'd first met Kira in that recycling center, Nathan stood in the Grand Council chamber again. But this time, he stood not as a nervous ambassador, but as a recognized member of one of Valoran's most prominent families and as Earth's appointed representative to the Galactic Union Council. Aridin, now even more ancient but still sharp, called the session to order. He said, "Today we vote on full member status for humanity in the Galactic Union Council, with all rights and responsibilities such status entails. Representative Brooks, as Earth's appointed voice, do you have any final words before we vote?" Nathan stood, looking at the assembled counselors from dozens of species. He said, "Counselors, 10 years ago I stood here as a nobody trying to convince you that humans deserved a chance. Today, I stand here as proof that you made the right choice. Not because humans are perfect, we're not, but because when given opportunity instead of opposition, we become partners worth having." He continued, "We've spent this decade learning from you. Learning Valoran philosophy, Banther engineering, Lorian artistry, and the wisdom of countless other species. In return, we've shared our own knowledge, our own perspectives, our own ways of solving problems. Together, we've accomplished things none of us could have done alone." Nathan paused, then added, "I'm not going to claim humans will never make mistakes or cause problems. We will, but we'll also stand with you when you face challenges. We'll bring our unpredictability, our adaptability, and yes, our compassion to bear in service of the greater good. That's what family does. And if the last decade has taught me anything, it's that the Galactic Union is a family we're proud to be part of." The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full council status. As the chamber erupted in multi-species celebration, Kira appeared at Nathan's side. She signed, though she could speak now through advanced Valoran technology, preferring the intimacy of their original communication method. "You did it again, brother. You changed the galaxy." Nathan signed back, "We did it. Together. Like family." Theron joined them, his eyes that brilliant, hopeful green. He said, "I often think about the day I arrived at Station Terminus 7, convinced I needed to demonstrate power and retrieve my daughter before continuing my campaign against your species. I was so certain I knew what needed to be done." He looked at Nathan with genuine affection. Theron continued, "You taught me that certainty without understanding is just arrogance in disguise. You taught me to question my assumptions and see beyond my fears. You gave me my daughter back and gained a family in the process. For a simple recycler, you certainly recycle outcomes effectively." Nathan laughed at the terrible joke, and Kira's eyes flashed gold with delight. Around them, beings of every species that comprised the Galactic Union celebrated together, a scene that would have seemed impossible a decade earlier. That night, Nathan stood alone in the same Valoran garden where Kira had asked him to join her family, looking up at alien stars that had become familiar. He thought about his journey from Earth to Station Terminus 7 to Valoran Prime. He thought about his sister, who was traveling to Valoran space to visit him next month. He thought about all the scared, uncertain moments that had somehow led to this. His communication device chirped with a message. It was from Dylan Rhodes, still on Station Terminus 7, but now running a major recycling innovation program that was being adopted across the Union. The message read, "Hey Nathan, saw the vote on the feed. Congrats on making us respectable. Remember when you were just the guy sorting garbage next to me? Who knew that helping one lost kid would change everything? Anyway, we're having a celebration at the old station. You should visit sometime. We miss you. Also, we have a new kid working here, a Banther who wants to learn human engineering. Figured you'd appreciate the irony. Humanity, teaching others now. Who would have thought?" Nathan smiled and composed a reply, "I'll visit soon." And yeah, who would have thought? Sometimes the universe has a better plan than we do. We just have to be open to it. Keep teaching, Dylan. That's how this whole thing works. We learn from them. They learn from us, and everyone gets a little better. He sent the message and stood a moment longer under alien stars, thinking about lost children and found families, about fear and hope, about the strange path that had brought a human recycler to the heart of galactic politics. In the end, Nathan realized the story wasn't really about him at all. It was about what happens when beings choose connection over fear, when they risk kindness without knowing the outcome, when they treat strangers as potential family rather than potential threats. It was about a girl who learned to trust despite her fear, a father who learned to hope despite his certainty, and a recycler who learned that sometimes the most valuable things people throw away are their prejudices and assumptions. And it was about humanity itself, imperfect and unpredictable, but always ready to reach out to the unknown with open hands and open hearts, proving day by day that the greatest strength any species could have was the willingness to grow. Nathan Brooks, former recycler of Station Terminus 7, now Representative Brooks of the Galactic Union Council, member of the House of Theron, and brother to the girl who'd changed everything, walked back toward the lights of the celebration, toward his family, toward a future that had seemed impossible but had become wonderfully, improbably real. Behind him, the Valoran garden whispered in the night wind, and overhead, the stars shone on a galaxy that was learning, slowly but surely, that differences could be bridges instead of walls, and that sometimes the most heroic thing anyone could do was simply be kind to a stranger who needed help. The story of humanity's integration into the Galactic Union would be told for generations, analyzed by scholars, and celebrated by storytellers. But those who were there, who lived it, knew the truth. It wasn't a story of grand politics or military strategy. It was a story of a man who taught a lost girl sign language, never knowing her father commanded the fleet, and in doing so, taught two species to speak each other's language in ways that went far beyond words. It was a story of humanity at its best, unpredictable, compassionate, and absolutely unwilling to let fear make their decisions for them. And in the end, that made all the difference. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.